An hour's time or so, the SpaceX Transport 3 mission will be launched by Tshwane's favourite tech entrepreneur, Elon Musk's company. In the payload, 3 nanosatellites, which have been produced here. Mbulani Mudau is the Chief Director for Space Science and Technology at the Department of Science and Innovation. Mbulani, good afternoon to you. It's quite exciting. Under an hour to go until the launch. What are these satellites? What will they actually do?
Good afternoon, Stephen, and to your viewers. It is indeed exciting for this country. Just to give you the context, this will be the very first constellation ever launched in the African continent. So we are really excited as South Africa and as the leaders in the development of the space capability in the continent. These 3 satellites, you would recall a few years back, we as a country decided that we need to maximize the potential that our oceans have in contributing to the country's economy. And as part of that, we as the DSI decided that we will contribute by building observational capabilities to ensure that we monitor marine resources. We ensure that we contribute to the ocean's governance. So these 3 satellites that will be launching in the next hour to ensure that the maritime domain awareness in South Africa does happen in terms of monitoring vessels or ships that comes to our economic exclusive zone, and also to ensure that we do manage the environmentally in terms of oil spills. These satellites are going to provide information or data that is going to be integrated into the Oceans and Coast Information Management System. So this launch, indeed, is not just launching the satellites up there, but it's to ensure that we protect our marine resources and we ensure that we maximize and extract as much benefit and economically in terms of our oceans economy. As you know, South Africa has a vast sea coast, which is over 3,000, and that will take quite a significant effort for us to be able to monitor these oceans using your normal vessels or ships, and therefore space becomes very critical in providing near real-time information for the decision makers. So we are indeed very excited, and this is a huge milestone for South Africa and the South African National Space Program.
And how do they power themselves? I mean, you want them to go forever if they can. Do they use solar power or something like that?
Oh, absolutely, Stephen and the viewers. They are covered by what we call the solar panels, which would, as they get exposure to the radiant energy of the sun, that they will then be able to generate more power so that we can be able to communicate with them here on the ground, but also to ensure that we can send signals or instructions in terms of how they should be behaving in the outer space.
Nice to see one part of South Africa that won't be affected by load shedding, no matter what happens. I do want to ask, so it's not just that they go up in the rocket. I mean, that's what we will see. But the hard part might be, I don't know, but the hard part might be making sure they come out of the rocket in the right place, because they all have to fit into the right place. They all have to end up in the right, I presume, a geostationary orbit for it to actually work.
No, absolutely. That becomes very important for the whole operations and the launch. We are aiming at an altitude of 500 kilometers above the sea level. That's where we have designed these 3 satellites to optimally function at that altitude. And therefore, it becomes very critical as Falcon 9 takes off, and when it reaches that altitude, that it should be able to release our satellites at the right orbital slot. And that is very important, because all the calculations that we've done for us to be able to receive what we call the automatic identification system information, we have to be at that altitude. And therefore, we are, of course, hoping that we will get them at that right altitude. In instances where it's not exactly at that altitude, we are able to communicate and maneuver with our satellites to get them to the right orbital slots.
Is it quite difficult to produce them? I mean, a lot of the work obviously is done on the ground, but it's a lot of computers. You all need to, space matters. The compactness of it matters. There's got to be very small equipment in there, and you've got to make it as light as possible as well.
No, absolutely. We, as South Africa, we're one of the leading countries in the miniaturization of the space capabilities of building what the components or the subsystems of our satellites. And we've seen that from years back, from when we built Sumbandira set, which its capability really, and the size that it was at 1 kilogram, that we were way advanced in terms of miniaturization of these. It has become very critical in the new space today that we're no longer building a low Earth observing satellite at a time, which is so costly because that has a huge expense implications in terms of the launching cost and so on. And therefore, if you can build them smaller and faster, as we're doing with the CubeSat, where we can replenish this, the goal is to build a constellation of 9 to 12 of these. And if there's failure, it's easier then to build another 3 and send them and replenish the constellation to ensure that there's continuity in terms of the information that we require to protect our marine resources and for ocean governance. So it is very important that we build them as compact as we are, and we're doing very well in that front, Stephen.
The economics of launching space satellites is changing. I mean, the private sector is doing it. It was never the private sector before. For a long time, it was only governments, and basically you needed to have a friend in the USSR or in the United States or maybe the EU's Ariane rocket. But this is all changing. Elon Musk, we all know he's from Swan-Air. I don't know if he's giving us a freebie on this one, but is the cost coming down?
Absolutely. The new space we've seen, I don't know if you've seen in the news, I think you did talk to John a few weeks back. We have a very highly successful program at University of KwaZulu-Natal where we're looking at building the indigenous launch capability, meaning that we will be able to build these satellites here in South Africa and launch them here in South Africa. And the focus really is on building rockets or launch vehicles that are that can take CubeSats and small satellites, because that's where the trend is going. And we're very excited as South Africa that this investment is paying off, and that we've done successfully some of this test campaign to look at our liquid rocket propulsion system. And therefore, yes, it's going to be very important that, academia and the private sector now, even in Africa, where we are the only country that is already building this capability, that we do take this opportunity and create a niche market for the African continent and make South Africa a place where, African countries that are emerging space nations can work with us, cooperate with us, in ensuring that we build these capabilities. So it is very important that as you build your space program, that you don't just focus on the upstream, but you have to look at your ground segment. You have to also look at your downstream segment, because your applications becomes very critical, and therefore access to space becomes critical, because we've seen in the last years where there were delays, as well as with this constellation that we're launching, that we ended up going to SpaceX because we had challenges and delays with other potential launchers that we would. So it is very important that we build our indigenous launch capability in South Africa so that we can have access to space, but also create this platform for the rest of the continent.
Mbalani Madau, thank you very much indeed, Chief Director for Space Science and Technology at the Department of Science and Innovation. Good luck for the launch. We'll be watching very closely. In fact, we'll bring it live to you here in under an hour's time.